James Horner and Celine Dion there with the theme from Titanic, and I challenge anyone not to be moved by that music, and it was very emotional. But in the studio with us today we've got someone who's been through the real life emotion, and just before I introduce Robyn, I'm just going to read the obituary that was for her husband. As a man of faith and great integrity, Richard lived by strong family values and was a huge proponent of living an active, healthy lifestyle. And following some uncharacteristically poor tennis results, loss of coordination against his son, amongst a few other minor symptoms, minor memory, fogginess, general daily fatigue, he was admitted to SOG in Murdoch Hospital in mid-November 2021, only, 3 months ago. And after several phases of testing, received the very probable diagnosis of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. A rapid decline in mental and physical functionality ensued, with Rich passing away just over 4 weeks after being admitted. Well, I've got to say you're very brave coming in, Robyn, and welcome. And I was wondering if, just before we sort of talk about the illness and his passing, if you could just paint us a picture of Richard, and let us get a picture of him.
So Richard was 57, but he was born with wonderful confidence, and when he walked into a room, he would just light up the room. He loved sport. He loved bat and ball sports. He was great fun. He was an encourager. He was resilient. He wasn't bound by tradition. He was a quiet leader. He loved God. He loved being a husband to me and a father to our sons, West and Austin. His love language was quality time and words of encouragement, which are great gifts to have as a teacher. He liked teenagers and getting them to enjoy sport rather than to excel. Participation was more important than winning to Rich. He taught health ed, and one of the major things he taught was that we have a spirit, we have a soul, and they're contained in our body. So he loved playing sport, tennis and golf with the boys. His work was being a good teacher. He was a mentor to young teachers, student teachers, and he was my husband. And as I said, we had quality time together. That was our love language. We just liked hanging out, enjoying each other's company. We had similar thoughts and views on life, but we had different interests and very different work. So that kept our marriage stimulating and interesting.
So when Richard got the symptoms, you weren't sort of worried initially? It was just something out of the blue?
Yeah, well, fatigue, weight loss, those are things that can happen, you know. You sort of think, oh, well, maybe I'm just a bit tired. And so when he started getting those poor tennis abilities, that he actually went on to have poor balance. And then his feet were jerking around and in the bed, and he was like not able to keep warm, and I thought that's a bit strange. You just put on another blanket. Then he started to have some cognitive decline, and the brain fog sort of went to like a little bit of dementia. He was and he lacked coordination, and then he started having a slowness of speech. And when he started having those symptoms, I drove him to hospital straight away, to the emergency department.
So how long over what period of time was that?
Probably about 2 weeks.
Right.
He had those 2 weeks to a month, those sort of, symptoms that weren't too bad. Yeah.
And how long before because they didn't give a diagnosis of CJD initially, did they?
No,
because
they weren't sure. They thought it was a motor neurone disease, and it took 10 days to diagnose it because, blood samples, MRIs, they had to send results off to Melbourne to be sure.
And did they give a definite CJD diagnosis, or said a probable?
No, once they had that response, the result back, they told us it was CJD. So, it was, we quickly Googled that because, it's 1 in a million that the incidence of it. So we'd never heard of it.
No.
And it said, Google said people with CJD can last a year, but it was actually just 1 month.
Yes.
From when we admitted him to when he died.
So just 1 in a million get the disease, and if you get the disease, it's fatal.
There's no cure.
No cure.
It's fatal. It's a neurological disease where the little prions, they're folded proteins, just start making the brain all spongy and, just they decline very quickly.
Yeah, so it's nothing you can catch. It's not hereditary or genetic.
There are different forms of it,
right.
And he had the main one, which was the sporadic, where we don't really know where it came from, but it's not from eating anything or genetic. It's just one of those things out of the blue. Yeah.
So when they finally diagnosed him with Richard with CJD, you were thinking that perhaps you might have up to a year with him.
Yes, that's what Google said, but the neurologist didn't know. He wasn't. No one would give us a date or a time, or it was sort of like how long is a piece of string.
Yeah.
So we just had to surrender that, not knowing. Just surrender that each day was a gift.
Right.
That we had together.
So after you got the diagnosis, did Richard then come home or did he stay in hospital?
No, he stayed in hospital, but we were able to take him out on day leave.
Yep.
And, so that was nice to just have him. But that got too difficult when his coordination became really tricky. And
right.
I think he had a seizure at the dinner table, and we just realised that hospital was the best place for him, and the care there was beautiful. The carers were lovely.
So how did Richard take the news that this was a death sentence for him?
Well, I'll just go back to when I was driving him to hospital, because faith is an important part of our lives, and I was driving Rich to that emergency department, and as we were driving, I prayed that God would show him something to comfort him, and he immediately had this image of Jesus holding him as a lamb. And when we eventually got told of his diagnosis, he was actually relieved to actually have. He knew, we knew that he had something, and he knew he was going home to Jesus. That picture of him being held as a lamb, just Jesus was bringing him home, and he didn't worry or have any fear. And the only time I saw him slightly distressed was when I was cuddling up to him and crying on the hospital bed, cuddling up to him, and he saw my distress, and that made him a little bit upset. But on the whole, he was just happy. Like his face would just light up each day when we came in, and happy to have each day, and that was beautiful.
Yeah. Yes, it's how do you sort of decide how you're going to fill in your time when you know it's just so short and it's got an end point? In our lives we make plans and we for tomorrow and the next day, yet you were having to make
I just trusted that God was holding my hand through it all. And I had this scripture from Isaiah 40 verse 8, and it's, the grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of the Lord endures forever. And we're all fading as we live. And I just saw that my husband was fading as a beautiful flower, but he's fading a little bit quicker than everybody else was at that time. And I just thought, well, I've just got to hang on to God. And so I made things special for him. I made sure that I was there every day, and we were just there at meal times, particularly my boys and I, and we had beautiful friends bringing food into the hospital for us. And we had our 35th wedding anniversary in the hospital.
Right. Mm. That was hard, I guess.
Yeah, it was like bittersweet because at the church, Red Door Church we go to, the musicians came and played his favourite song, King of Kings, and he wasn't able to talk by then, but you could see he was smiling and at peace and he really loved it. And I just invited all these friends and family. I'm not on Facebook, so that was quite tricky, but to come and celebrate with us. And that will always be a special moment that I hold, that God pulled together, that we could be together on that 35th wedding anniversary and celebrate that time together in the hospital. He died a week after that.
Right. Now, after you've had such, well, would you call it traumatic experience?
Yeah.
Is that going to be sort of an overriding memory, do you think? Or are you able now to remember the good times before that as easily?
Yes. Yeah. I really think it was only that last month that things were difficult, but before that, I've got all these beautiful, happy moments and memories. I know you can get consumed by grief, but I'm just holding on to God that he was faithful to give me a beautiful husband for 35 years and to have that special time together. And also that he did die quickly, in a way that he wasn't lingering. He wouldn't have wanted to linger. You know, he was a fast sort of a guy. And I just accept, like, 1 in a million. He lived such a healthy life. How else was he going to go, you know? I think it would have to be that sort of like 1 in a million, a really rare thing that would take him down in the end.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what's a good day look like? What's a bad day look like? For you, obviously, you have good and bad days. What's a bad day look like?
Well, I've been reading lots of books about grief, and one of the things is brain fog, where you just can't remember things and you just forget things. So if a bad day, I'm pretty foggy, but I'm going through the legal and the probate and that financial sorting out at the moment. So that's a bad day, having to do all that work. My good days are being around with my family and friends, and I joined a gym recently, and I'm really enjoying a healthy body and, you know, those endomorphins probably. I've been meeting up with other widows and hearing their stories, and I really love connecting with those other widows and hearing how they're going on their journey, and that's lovely. I just enjoy sharing that time together with my family, my friends, and these new friends, these new widows.
So just getting on to the new people you've met, the widows, how do... Are they Christian, or have they had
both? All kinds. Yeah, all kinds of people who've lost the love of their life and how they're getting on with their life. And some of them it's been a long time ago, and some of them it's quite recent. So hearing their stories, and I think hearing their stories and sharing my story actually helps the burden be shared, and that we're all walking through this valley of the shadow of death together, and that's sort of like when you're with other people who are going through the same thing, it really brings a strength and that we can do this together. Yeah, that's a really healthy thing.
Having been through it, how do you feel it would have been to have to go through it without God? Oh,
I just think it would be a big empty space, and really, look, I don't think I'd get out of bed in the morning, whereas, you know, I do. I know this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I just think if I didn't have that hope, I think I would just be with my head under the pillow and not wanting to get up.
Right.
Yeah,
it would be tough.
Yeah.
So are your boys still living at home?
Yeah, they are. One's a FIFO, so he's 1 week on, 1 week off, and the other one is living at home with me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously there's some some comfort there. To be an empty nester and lose your husband would have been a lot more difficult, I would think.
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite ready for having a totally empty house.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to have the boys around.
So do you think they're going to be around much longer? Or?
No, I think they're doing it for me, which is beautiful. But I know eventually they have to leave and cleave, and So I know, I'll be ready to give my blessing to them when they want to go.
Fantastic. Yeah. So have you actually been able to sit down and make any plans from here on?
Well, I've gone back to work a little bit,
right.
And that's good because that's sort of like my old bubble of, how we always had our work separate. So that's actually a therapy, I think, to go back to work. Just a little bit. And I'm also thinking about planning a trip to Israel because I'd really like to see where Jesus walked. Yeah.
So what sort of work do you do, Robyn?
I work in aged care. I work with widows.
Oh.
Well, as in aged care has about 99% widows living there. And,
right.
So I spend time with widows.
And doing what?
I test their eyes.
You're an optometrist.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Very good. So that's you don't do sort of private optometry. It's all in the
aged care.
In the aged care.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I have to say I take my hat off to you, Robyn. It's to come in and actually share all that is very brave, and we appreciate it. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, just that it was a really holy moment being there at the passing of my husband. It was just a wonderful thing to see them see Rich release his spirit up to God and for that peace to take over. And what he taught kids all his life was that we have a body, we have a spirit, and we have a soul. And to see that body, it's just like a shell. It's just a tent, It's just what we carry our spirit and soul around in.
That's right.
To see the spirit and the soul gone to God, to be released, was just a holy moment, a sacred moment. And I'm so blessed to be able to have been there at that time.
Right.
And, I just am thankful for having that moment.
Yeah. I'm going to play a song in a moment called Going Home. And it's very interesting. It talks about walking through an open door, moving on, and real life just begun. It's not an end, but just living on. So here's Sissel with Going Home.